right. So we're going to call this meeting of the Planning Advisory Committee into session. However, I don't believe we have quorum to actually do any actions today. So it will be a informational, is it committee of the whole? Is that what we're calling it? That's the official term.
Yeah.
So many of you may have noticed, but I am not Jeff. So Scott Orr is serving as chair today. Jeff will not be joining us any longer because he has taken a job in Fairfax. So we'll start by going around for introductions in the room, and then we'll go to Zoom. So why don't we start with Elliot and then work our way around here.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Elliot. I know about half of you. I'm an associate planner with the City of Roundtable Park, and I'm attending these meetings in Jeff's absence until duties shift around and we get fully staffed up again.
I'm getting over the shock of Jeff going to Fairfax. Jessica Jones, Deputy Director for Citizens.
Chris Marnie with SCTA.
Shauna Gauze with Sonoma County Transportation Authority.
And I'm Scott Orr. I'm the Assistant Director with County Sonoma.
Noah House, City of Cotati.
Dana Trey, SCTA.
Adam Garcia, SCTA, CPA.
Julie Nichols, SCTA. Okay, and then we'll go to Zoom. Ada, do you want to kick us off and then throw it to somebody else?
Sure, Ada Chan, ABAG MTC. Ross.
SCTA or CPA?
Some with the Barbadell.
I'm
Hi,
Tarina
Carrie.
Wilson, City of Santa Rosa.
Harry Svanstrom, City of Sebastopol. And
Orlando Ramirez with Caltrans District 4.
Owen Christopherson with Smart.
All right, last call for anybody that wants to introduce themselves. Okay, so we're going to shift into announcements, and the first announcement is so with my new position, I will not be able to serve as chair in the future. So we will need to hopefully in the September meeting have a formal action to select a new chair and vice chair, which means that if there was 1 month where you come in person, next month would be that month. Otherwise, you may be volunteered to
It's actually October. We
Okay.
alternate with the housing.
Okay, well, October might be the month if you don't want to be volunteered in your absence, since it's the vote in the room that counts. So any other announcements, Chris? Okay. So on the administrative side, we won't be approving any of the wonderfully detailed meeting notes. We won't be adopting the agenda. And we won't be doing anything related to the June 15th meeting. So we'll kick off with the Go Sonoma draft policies.
that'd be me.
Okay.
So you guys are all probably aware that Sonoma County passed a tax measure for transportation, extending our existing tax measure called Measure M. The new one is called Go Sonoma. We passed that in 2020. It will start collection in 2025. So staff is tasked with producing a strategic implementation plan. It works as our 5-year programming document and as housing for our policies and procedures, guidelines, that sort of thing. This is what it looks like for Measure M. You may be familiar with it. It is available online. I'll be happy to pass it around in case you'd like to look at it. But we're creating one for Go Sonoma, and it is required to be approved or presented to the board by December of this year in order to be ready to go for as we transition between Measure M and Go Sonoma. So with that, there are so we've based I have to turn it on, don't I, Drew? There we go. So we've based it essentially on the Measure M strategic implementation plan. So it has a very similar layout. So there will be an executive summary, background chapter, and then the third chapter will be strategic approach and programming. And then the fourth chapter is policies and procedures. The fifth chapter is the financial plan and cash flow. And then the sixth chapter is project information sheets. So we try to provide a project information sheet for each of the projects that's been selected to receive funding. And then there are appendices. So right now, we're putting things together. We have a draft of the chapter 4, which is policies and procedures, all of the information sheets and the appendices. We did a call for projects in 2022. It was surrounding the One Bay Area grant, but we also programmed funding to Go Sonoma. And so those projects that were selected for Go Sonoma funding have project information sheets. So this information has been presented to the Technical Advisory Committee and the Citizens Advisory Committee already. And so we're just circulating through the committees, making sure everybody gets a chance to look at it before it gets finalized. There are a few things that I'd like to draw your attention to. As I said, much of the document will look very similar to Measure M, but there are some new things that are included in the policies that I would like to draw your attention to. The first being 4.1, which is the annual apportionment programs. There is new information on up to 2% of the program apportionments that are available for free fare programs on a reimbursement basis to the transit operators. And then there is 3% of the total program is available to develop first last mile programs and commuter programs, and that portion will be managed by SCTA. The next thing I'd like to draw your attention to is the draft strategic, the competitive programs. So in Measure M, we had selected projects. They were approved by the voters. There was no changing that list of projects. However, in Go Sonoma, we have competitive programs now. So there are evaluation criteria, which is really the crux of why I'm bringing it to the PAC. There are evaluation criteria. So these are things that we would like the planning side of the houses to be able to look over and have some familiarity with as we move forward. So we are taking 5% for capacity building out of the competitive programs, and that will allow SCTA to provide assistance to the project sponsors for technical studies or analytics like GHG reduction, that sort of thing, and also grant applications and public engagement. So if there's something where we can help and it's associated with the Go Sonoma program, then we will use that money for that purpose. The next things that have changed, are the eligible cost guidelines, particularly SCTA project support requested by a Go Sonoma project sponsor. We will again provide support. And then we are instituting quarterly reporting for those projects that will receive Go Sonoma funding. They have not done that in the past. So timeline is that we are taking all of this information to the committees right now, and we are requesting feedback. If you could get that to us by next week, that'd be great. I know that's kind of short notice, but as I said, not a lot of this has changed from the Measure M strategic implementation plan. So it's really those sections that I drew your attention to that you can look at. The other sections will also be brought to committee for review. They're just not completed yet. And then we anticipate taking an entire draft to the board on December 11th. It will be draft. It could change after that once we get input from the board, but we will take at least a draft to them to meet that deadline that we have. So there is a link in your agenda packet, and it's a pretty lengthy document. It's about a little over 100 pages, but a lot of that is project information sheets and maps. So you can scroll through it pretty quickly. I think it's only about 10 pages of the policies and procedures chapter. And then there are appendices in there. And towards the end of that, you'll see the evaluation criteria that we used in the last call for projects and that we anticipate using into the future. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Do we have any questions?
Can we talk a little bit about how, and I'm not that familiar with the project side of it because it's typically lives in our public works realm, but so how some of the regional transportation elements plug in with this plan. We have kind of an interest in this in Cotati, given the amount of development that's going on in Roder Park. And then how most of those folks or many of those folks kind of funnel through Cotati to get to 101 and other places in the county. So we're really kind of, I think, highly interested in a little bit struggling with how to best kind of implement the regional impact elements into some of our local projects and ideally some funding that helps support those.
Well, we did try to combine all the calls for projects so that we would be able to use Go Sonoma as sort of a leveraging tool for those regional PACs, which was why we tried to marry it up with the OVAG schedule. But there is definitely an effort to try to bring more long-range planning into account, which is why we're trying to reach out to everybody to make sure that there's that cross-pollination between planning and where we get to with the public works, when we get to the public works point of implementing the projects themselves. Did that answer your
No,
question?
it is helpful, yeah. Thank you.
And so it was Wednesday, August 23rd was your requested.
Yeah, I apologize. I mean, we could probably take it a little bit later than that, but that was, I used that presentation for the Citizens Advisory Committee as well, so that was their deadline. But yeah, by the end of next week would be great.
Well, everybody in this room is used to deadlines like that. Okay, well, unless you have anything else to add, we'll move on to the next item.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've got a Plan Bay Area 2050 plus update.
Yeah, and this will be me. So, and Ada, please jump in if you have anything to add, but I was just gonna provide some information on what we've been working on with MPC currently. And it's really right now project focused. So this may get to some of your questions as well, like how we get those projects from the general plans and the CIPs, into our comprehensive transportation plan and then into the regional transportation plan to access those monies. So, so just jumping right in, this is information that went out to the public works folks as well at our TAC. So we're working with them to identify new projects that could show up in the regional transportation plan. So MTC has officially kicked off the regional transportation plan update. They're calling it Plan Bay Area 2050 plus this time around. So added a plus to Plan Bay Area. So they've indicated that it's supposed to be a limited update, and they're really focusing on updating projects and not updating RETA this time around. So they've also indicated that revenues are expected to be lower than they were before, and unmet needs for projects or unmet financial requirements are going to be higher. So, the leeway to add new projects is going to be, constrained. So I have included, this is in the agenda packet, planbayarea.org is the updated website. So they'll be pushing out information there. They're doing outreach here in Sonoma County and across the region. They had a table or booth at the fair a week from last Saturday. So they were gathering input from Sonoma County that way. And there'll be other opportunities to interface with the MTC team. But like I said, we're really focused on looking at transportation projects right now. So I've put together a timeline of how that's going. So the focus right now has been looking at big regional mega projects or regional significant projects. So we went to the TAC last month and talked about this and said, hey, let's try and gather any new project proposals, keeping those constraints in mind, right? Like there's going to be less revenue and more asks on that money. And also keeping in mind when it's important to get a project into the regional transportation plan. And basically, that's important if you're not an exempt project, and I'll go into what that means a little bit. But if you want to access federal, state, or regional money, And you have to go through the environmental, like CEQA or NEPA process. So I have a slide that'll provide a little more detail on that. It's also important that the project's actually moving forward and that, there's going to be some movement on it in the next 4 or so years. The regional transportation planning cycle is, happens every 4 years. So if there's a project that's important that may not be moving forward, we can add it next cycle, right? And then make sure it's in our local document, the comprehensive transportation plan, CIPs, general plans, things like that. So that's kind of a good path. If we have it in the CTP, we can start moving that forward into the regional transportation plan. But if there's a need for it to access those, federal or other dollars sooner, we can, propose it right now. So yeah, right now we're gathering that information. So the TAC has been providing some information on that. Just wanted to keep everyone in the loop on what your colleagues are doing. We're going to be submitting a list of project proposals on September 1st to MPC. We're going to take an item to our board on September 11th with a list of proposed projects. It's probably going to be pretty short. And then have a final list to MPC by the end of September. Then there'll be a chance over the next 6 to 8 months to update smaller projects. And a lot of times these projects are in programmatic categories. So they're line items that include a lot of smaller projects. So if a project doesn't meet, this big criteria, it can fit into one of those categories. The final transportation project list will be finalized next summer, and then MDC will adopt the final project list and strategies and scenarios, what they call the blueprint, next summer, and then they go into the environmental phase. The RTP. So this graphic is kind of a nice way of seeing how things trickle down into the regional transportation plan and actually getting committed, constructed. So that blue circle is the, all the project ideas, right? These are coming from the general plan, CIPs, our CTP. So this is where we do that, really creative long-range transportation planning, right? Like what needs we have, let's get those in a document somewhere, right? So we can continue to develop them. So once those are moving along and need to access some of the big funding pots, we can move it into the regional transportation plan. So that's kind of that magenta ring there. So the state maintains the TIP, Transportation Improvement Program. So that's when funding starts flowing to some of these projects. And then once things are moving forward, nearing construction, they're moved into that committed category. So that's kind of the flow of projects. So here on the planning side, we're primarily working on those blue and purple rings. And then our programming folks like Shauna and David, they're working in those other areas, like getting, once those projects are identified and getting solidified, start moving those forward to actually getting completed. So I talked about these 2 different types of projects. They're exempt projects and regionally significant projects. The exempt projects are usually smaller, the dollar amounts are lower. They're not on like a regional transportation corridor. And so they generally don't have to be a separate line item in the RTP, and they are grouped in these other programmatic categories, they're called. So things like bicycle and pedestrian facilities, right? Or road maintenance or local road improvements. So those are all different programmatic categories that are listed out in the plan, the smaller projects fall under. And then the other regionally significant projects, they need to have a little more detail be included in the plan. So here's a list of, a little more information about exempt projects. Generally, they're not improving capacity or increasing capacity on the transportation system. They're exempt from regional transportation air quality conformance. They're categorical exclusions. Like I said, they're in programmatic categories. They're similar transportation projects identified by single listing in geographic areas. So again, a few examples: minor highway improvements, widening of local streets, bike paths, things like that. So looking at the regionally significant projects, there's a long list that MPC's provided. But I think the big things to keep in mind is these are generally larger projects that are improving, actually increasing capacity or taking capacity away from big facilities on what's called the principal arterial system. That is a definition that Caltrans uses. So there are maps out there that identify it, but it's basically major arterials, highways, freeways, things like that. So any project over about a quarter mile that adds lanes or takes lanes away would be in this category. Fixed guideway transit infrastructure like SMART is included in this category as a regionally significant project. Adding transit stations or terminals to that fixed guideway system, expanding transit fleets or service levels fits in this category. Things like cordon pricing, tolling, and transit fares also could be considered. And then any big project with a price tag of over $250. So that's another threshold. It kind of triggers it going into this category. So here's a look at what the principal arterial system looks like in Santa Rosa. So you can see it's the highways, some of the major arterials. And again, there's a link here, and all the public works books have this information as well. So they're aware of this. One new thing MTC has added this time around is they're open to considering resilience projects. So things looking at sea level rise and flooding, but also wildfire evacuation routes and other hazard mitigations. So your public works colleagues may be thinking about some of these types of projects, or if you have ideas that could be submitted for this plan or a future plan, maybe just keep these on the radar. That these may be something that can access some of those funds in the future. So this was the process. This is the process to submit new projects, and I know we asked the TAC to provide project ideas by today. So we've received a few bits of feedback, and so if you have any ideas that you'd like to talk about, please give me a call, and we can involve the public works folks to make sure, you know, if that's something we should get on kind of the long-term radar or something really critical right now. So I think a lot of the longer-term projects, we want to just flag those, make sure they're in our comprehensive transportation plan and have those critical up. One example is the potential interchange at Fulton and Highway 12. So that's kind of a longer range project that will eventually need to be in the plan, but it's not close enough yet. So it's something we'll keep moving in that direction on. So these are the criteria here. So it needs to be in that regionally significant category, you know, meeting one of those main bullets on that last slide. It needs to have been in our comprehensive transportation plan or another plan or study. It needs to be open between 2025 and 2050. And this is a really key one. There's an expectation that the project will be needing federal, state, or regional funding. So if it doesn't need that, if it's completely locally funded, it doesn't necessarily need to go into the plan. So MDC has a project template for these that we can use. Like I said, resilience projects can be submitted. They're not requiring board or council action, but we think it's a good idea to keep the decision makers in the loop on this. And this is our internal schedule here right now.
Looks like we might have a question on this slide.
Oh, Gary. Yeah, sorry.
Thanks.
Watching.
Oh, no worries. And I'm sorry I couldn't join you today in person. But this is excellent. I do have one question for the regionally significant. I do have one potential project, which is in our general plan, road improvement along significant road, potentially roundabout on 116. It was shown in red on the map a few slides ago. I don't have any idea what the cost of that would be. I'm sure it's not more than 250 million. But what category and how would I submit that to you?
So let's maybe talk a little bit in more detail about that over, today or tomorrow, if you have time. Is that something that you think will be needing to go to construction in the next 4 years, or is it a little further out?
It's probably a little bit further out.
Okay.
We are doing an EIR for an 80 to 90 unit residential project on the north side of town. I'm getting the traffic results of that next week for their EIR, which will be a little bit indicative on the impacts to that particular intersection.
Yeah, why don't I can give you a call later today if that's okay, and we can maybe talk.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah. Okay.
Great, thanks. And then here are recommendations to the TAC and to all you as planners. So, like I mentioned before, most smaller projects here in the county can fit in those programmatic categories. So there's some benefits to that. You know, they're a little more flexible, right? Like, and things can move out a little bit easier. Like I said before, the submission should be advancing with local funds or other funds. They need to be moving along if you want to push them into the RTP. We'll have another bite at this in 4 years, right? So Carrie, that project, if we're thinking maybe it'll be ready to go in 4 or maybe 8 years, we should definitely keep it on the radar. But if it doesn't need to go in the plan this year, we should kind of tee it up for looking at a future RTP cycle.
Right.
So, like I said before, the revenues for this plan are expected to be lower with more needs, so it's going to be harder to get things in. So we may submit new projects, and MPC may come back and say, well, based on the revenue, there's not enough money, so you need to remove some stuff. So that definitely is in the realm of possibilities. And then, you know, we have the comprehensive transportation plan. So any projects that we don't need to submit now, let's make sure that they're in our comprehensive transportation plan on that list. And so that's a good place where things can trickle up. We last updated that in 2021. That was the adoption date. So we'll be looking at kicking off an update to our CTP next year. So that'll include getting new project information, doing analysis and things like that. Updating that document. But that's where things are at with the RTP right now. There's currently analysis going on, looking at regional transit service. So there's a concurrent process called Transit 2050. They had a plus to it too. Do you remember? It may just be Transit 2050. But they're looking at regional transit needs and, you know, regional transit network and efficiencies there. So there's analysis going on there, but this is the latest that we've been working on here at SCTA. And, you know, we provide this information to the public works folks. And so we wanted to make sure you're all in the loop as well. And, you know, even if you don't have projects, you know, maybe what they're working on and kind of keep in mind other, you know, if you have projects in your general plans or area specific plans, how they can kind of move forward with that process. So that's it for my presentation, and I'd be happy to provide any additional information or answer questions. Carrie, it'll be great to follow up and kind of get some more information about that project and talk about the best way to move that forward. But yeah, that's where we're at right now. I'll come back with regular updates on other things happening in the Lab area.
Okay. Anybody have any follow-up questions on that?
Chris, this is Kevin up in Cloverdale. I think it looks like that the extension of SMART from Healdsburg to Cloverdale won't be included in the MTC plan. We're a little disappointed about that. I don't know if you had any thoughts or ways that we could nudge that to be put back in there.
Kevin, right now, we're working with MTC and SMART to submit that project. So what we'll be taking to our board is a recommendation to support SMART's submission of a project going all the way to Cloverdale. So that's our plan right now. But like I said before, we're expecting the revenues to be down. So MTC very well could come back and say, hey, we need to take some things out. So you know, that's what we're planning on doing right now, and we'll have to see kind of how things develop going forward.
Well, I don't think we would expect it to be funded, but at least keep it in there for the 10 years or however long it's going to take. But thank you.
Yeah, definitely a priority for us and our board. So we're going to be pushing on it and asking that something be included in the plan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You got a question now?
Yeah, we have kind of an interesting project to realign one of our streets and signalize it where it hits Highway 116, West County Avenue. There's a lot of adjacent development. It's an unsafe situation, but it's getting federal funding. It's on the, Caltrans infrastructure, but it's kind of a smaller scale project, so it seems to straddle both sides of the criteria.
Yeah,
And I'd love to chat with you about how, A, is it in the plan, funding, conversation, and B, how we could make sure it kind of cruises along appropriately. And then
Yeah.
we're doing our own environmental on it. And so that's just another place where it kind of walks on both sides of the line.
yeah, that'd be great. And if it's under that quarter-mile, it might be able to fit in one of those programmatic categories. So yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay.
I can follow up with MTC and see if they've already included it.
Yeah.
And if not, where we can kind of
Okay.
put something like that in.
Because there's also two potential phases. One, it's for the a stretch of the highway that is longer than a quarter mile, but then it's also the intersection itself and getting a signal installed, and that's really the safety, the critical piece. So anyway, okay,
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll follow up.
perfect.
So I think conceptually, the smart train is the easiest to be like, yeah, that makes sense, that that's in there. Is there anything else that is currently put forward that, just to give people a sense of, what kind of things the TAC recommended, or is at least thrown out there as possibilities?
Yeah, so I can go through the projects that we had in for the last plan, and there are a few recommendations that have made it kind of been forwarded in so far. So we have a bus transit headway improvement project in there that's a combined project that we worked with all the transit providers in Sonoma County that looks at improving bus service and headways. And they also asked that we include a line item in that looking at microtransit service at the smart stations. So similar to it's Smart Connect, I believe. The microtransit service up in the airport area, kind of the on-demand small buses.
So would something like the North Santa Rosa stations shuttle to the county center be in under that?
Exactly, yeah, that's exactly that category. Yep.
Okay.
I should have this right in front of me, but we have a Highway 101 corridor project in there too that includes a lot of different potential interchange improvements, including railroad. I think Todd Road may be in there, Bellevue, a few other interchange improvements in the Highway 101 corridor. So that's kind of a local big programmatic type category. And then we had two smart projects in there before, the North Petaluma Station and Smart to Windsor. So the new ones that we've heard about, Rob from Santa Rosa proposed the Fulton Highway 12 and a few other improvements. They're a little further out, so we're gonna look at including those later. And then in Petaluma, there's the Caulfield Bridge that they'd like to include, and potentially taking out the linear overcrossing. We need to shift them around. So pretty minor changes right now. And then again, supporting smart submission. We're going all the way to Cloverdale. Supporting MTC is kind of managing the Highway 37 corridor. So supporting them submitting Highway 37 is an improvement. So yeah, those are the magnitude of projects that are included in there. And then after we get through this big project section, we'll be able to take a look at those smaller categories as well and see if there need to be adjustments there. So
as a related but more general question, do any of the jurisdictions have any of their emergency management folks on the TAC? Just because of those additional considerations such as evacuation planning. Yes, people drive on the roads that are public works jurisdiction, but it's the emergency management people that might have more insight into long range improvements that the engineer folks may not consider. So probably too short term for this cycle, but if it's something that ABAG MTC is going to be continuing, might be worth pulling one of those folks in for future rounds.
definitely, yeah. And this is new for this plan update, right? So I think going forward, there'll be a continued emphasis on resilience. So yeah, there's not always the communication, or the public works folks are maybe looking at they have different priorities, right?
Right.
And the emergency managers do.
Okay, well, do we want to move on to pending development database, the 2023 update draft results with Adam?
All right, yes. Thank you, everyone who has helped in this process. It's been a significant lift trying to map out all of the development projects across the county, but I think we're just about there. We've got, this will all be feeding into the Sonoma County travel model. So this is the first step in really understanding where new development is going into. We'll be updating then, looking at the existing conditions at the TAS traffic analysis zone level next, and then looking at future conditions after that at the TAS level as well. So this is really the base that we're working with to inform existing conditions. So there was, yeah, a lot of great successes, I think, from this round, just being able to use the APR data to be able to update information. There's already a set list for all of our housing data, so we could use that with a lot of detailed information around parcel numbers and so forth. I think there's also a lot of great potential that still we're continuing to explore with MTC to be able to update this information into the Bay Area Spatial Information System model. What Elliot worked with previously at the Housing Connect tool with the Napa Sonoma Collaborative as well, focused on housing. So there's some interesting, I think, future collaborations we can look at and are exploring to be able to showcase where this development data is happening, so we can be, I think, more communicative with our constituents and with folks just knowing around kind of where development activity is happening. One of the big lifts that we did take this round was trying to really hone in on getting parcel specific, which was also both, yeah, good and bad. It takes a little longer to be able to, you know, sort through all the different between building permits and planning projects, for instance, getting that parcel number correct. So we were, yeah, in a good position now to be able to look across the county and both look at kind of what's the scope of that project. So the size in terms of parcels or square footage, numbers of hotel rooms, but then also look at the kind of parcel extent. So you could have a, you know, a large parcel that just has an ADU, or you can have a, you know, a small little corner lot that's building, you know, multi-stories. So we're thinking a lot about how that will come into our pending development map that we've used in the past, and we'll be updating that. So that will be an online map that I think we'll be able to show both those relationships, both kind of the magnitude, but then also the geographic scope. So we'll be able to look at that soon. Let's see, we have most of the jurisdictions reporting in. I think we're gonna have a meeting on Friday, I believe, with the county to get the final kind of review of data, and then we're still working with the city of Sonoma to get their final list. But I think we're good, pretty close, just need a final confirmation. So one of the questions, I think, and please stop me at any time, I'm going to be going through kind of the maps and tables of the cities that we do have. But one of the questions that immediately came up, I think, was just looking at kind of the completed projects or withdrawn projects, trying to figure out what do we do with those. I think in the past, we've just kind of said, if it's, you know, withdrawn, delete it, ignore it, it's gone. Completed, we'll put it in another, you know, folder just to keep track of it. But just wondering if there's any value before we start moving on to the next stage of kind of keeping that withdrawn, with those withdrawn projects, maybe just in a tabular form, not on the eventual map, but just wanted to get a quick kind of read of folks, how they would like to see that. And all of this information could also be, you know, put in the maps that I share as well too, showing what's active, what's completed / withdrawn. That's all very at our fingertips. So just wanted to open that question up and just see if there are any other immediate questions before we kind of dive into the maps and tables.
So for Santa Rosa, we don't have a lot of withdrawn. Like we don't very often have people withdraw their projects, but it's more like projects that have been approved and the entitlements have expired. And then those ones, to me, it seems like we would want to perhaps put them in a little folder somewhere, because, and I don't know about anybody else, but we often have people come back and try to figure out how to resurrect those.
Mhm.
So it'd be probably good to hold on to them at least for a little while.
Okay,
Yeah, that was gonna be my question as well. If for you, withdrawn is things that are working through the permit process and fizzle out, or things that have been approved and they should be moving into construction, but aren't for whatever reason, and then just fizzle out then.
yeah, I think we're trying to be fairly black and white in how we think about withdrawn, where it's actually taken off of the planning. Permitting tracking sheet that you guys have, or database that you have. I know there's a lot of ones that are should be and right up to that point. So we want to be able to work with you in either case of just knowing, and that was a lot of the questions that came back from this review was, this project's been stalled out. Do we keep it? Do we not? So some of that is a choice on your side to say, well, do we keep it, or do we just say it's reached its 3-year, 5-year timeline and now it's done? But either way, we can definitely keep that and just put it in another little tab and be able to reference it then later. I think some of that might be helpful, just thinking about the future conditions as well, just knowing what is the interest of development on that. Might we see that again? So I think that's definitely something we can do.
Okay, yeah, I think it brings the most value if there's a distinction between withdrawn or expired. Just to provide like the clearer picture. If we are keeping track of the things that never ended up happening. Plus,
Perfect.
like, you never know what type of trends you might start to see that we don't even think about at the moment.
Mhm. Great, no, that's cool. I will definitely make that distinction between withdrawn and expired. We can use that in some of the review that we've had right now and going forward as well.
Yes, so I would absolutely agree with what was already said, like, if somebody withdraws a project, it's either they've determined that they're not gonna do it, or they're gonna supplant it with something else very quickly, because they pivoted to a different business model, or some type of a different investor got involved. A project that is expired, there's a 50% chance that it'll try to come back at some point in the relatively near future, so I do think what everyone else has said is absolutely right.
Okay, perfect, very helpful. Carrie, go ahead.
Yeah, for us, we do have folks withdraw things occasionally. Usually they've just decided to not do the project or to do something completely different. So it's definitely going to be a change. For expired, we have up to 5 years of extension, 3 years plus 2 1-year extensions. So usually if it goes past that, they're not going to be doing the project. And I think we usually update with when you send out the forecast on those items.
Okay, great, thank you for that. Any other questions? And again, please feel free to stop me during this as well.
I've got just a question on the data. I was looking over the data that Ari provided.
Mhm.
We have a couple new projects that are in the pre-application stage that we could include at this point, but just kind of wondering if you have a sort of drop dead deadline for changes, if you still have some outstanding data from jurisdiction.
Yeah, we can absolutely take information. We're going to be taking the results of this, presenting it to the CAC and then the board over the next few months. So we can throw in any preliminary projects, or if something's expired or withdrawn that you noticed, that is definitely doable as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And before I get into the maps, so one other thing, started a process of reaching out to the sovereign nations of Sonoma County and trying to focus in on what their specific development projects are, recognizing that those are distinct jurisdictions and should not overlap with the adjacent cities. Okay, I'm going to do a makeshift story map here. Just basically scroll down on my PDF. So we're starting kind of from, I guess, alphabetically, Cloverdale in the top. Let me see if I can just move that. Is that even on there? No, it's not. Okay, so going down from Cloverdale, I've included the PDAs. Each kind of project has its label. I'm open to adding other layers if this is helpful. Right now we have city limits. In this case, there's a lot of development in the southern part of Cloverdale that we could indicate that, you know, there's an urban growth boundary here as well that's encompassing this area. So as areas expand, that's something we can easily accommodate. So then each jurisdiction then will get a kind of breakdown in this way of I think you should have seen this last time. Just what types of projects, these are land use types, the number of distinct projects, units, how many are affordable, and then any non-residential components for project size.
Excuse me, it looked like you had Katati as the name on the map there.
Oh, sorry, thank you for catching that.
Yeah, no worries.
Yep, I will change that. Good eye. See how many other areas you can find, please. So going down, here is Katati. So looking at their the various PDAs and development happening within there, variety of projects throughout the city, and then again their results. Let's see here, we have Healdsburg, a lot of small development. It's very impressive, just a lot of ADUs scattered across the city. And a few larger development projects kind of along the corridors. Let's see, moving on to Petaluma. Yeah, Petaluma's also got quite a few number of big downtown development projects, some open field, open space development projects kind of in the center of town, and a variety of ADUs kind of scattered around. And this is one of those examples. For instance, Scott Ranch, we can say that the actual, you know, while that area is quite large, this southern parcel is going to be protected as a park. The actual development would be kind of just on this parcel to the north of Windsor Drive. So that's where on that kind of online map I was referencing, we could have some type of scale to kind of say what the number of units are. So even if you do see a large parcel, there might be a smaller number of units or something, we can work with that process. So looking at their results quickly. Moving down to Rohnert Park. Few ADUs scattered around, quite a few large development projects. It's the Station Avenue. That'll be the downtown next to their smart station. And here's our listing for Rohnert Park. Here's probably the scariest one of all, Santa Rosa. Amazing how much development is, yeah. It's a very even distribution when you look across the city. So yeah, great amount of work going on. As they say, cranes all over the place.
Lots of complaints about. Yeah, I get complaints every day about how much construction's happening and like, we have to stop this. What?
And so, yeah, quite 104 ADUs going in. Those are projects, 340 ADU units, actually. Very significant. Moving down.
Is that permitted ADUs right now? Like, or are those from the APRs or?
Yeah, these are in the permitting process, right?
Wow.
Yeah. There might be some completed in there, but I don't think there's too many. I think in my final update, I'll make sure that we take those out. But I think, yeah, that's in permitting right now. Or in planning, I should say, planning or permitting. And here's Sebastopol. Got everything there. And I believe that should, oh, and Windsor, of course. For the south. So again, some annexation projects if we want to include the urban growth boundary or urban service area or sphere of influence, all of those can be easily included. Any of the area plans that are relevant, particular regional ones, like equity, priority communities, transit priority areas, very open to making any modifications if you see fit. Otherwise, PDAs will be the ones that stay on there. So, and that should be it. So, yeah, happy to go back to a city if you want to look more or think about how we use this data in addition to kind of what we were talking about already. I know that there's we'll be sharing this with MTC, the kind of final parcel data. Also be sharing it with the Housing Connect tool. I think our biggest interest in coming, when we do this next year is, have we made it any easier for all of us, all sides, to just really be able to say, here, let's just update these few numbers and make it a more consistent process. So yeah, I think that's where thinking about the APR data, that's a process that we already have to do. There is parcel data in there. One of the challenges I was mentioning was kind of distinguishing between a planning project and then when it gets permitted. So a lot of the APR listings were kind of individual permitted buildings in part of a larger planning area. So knowing how those relate to each other, I think could really help move the process forward a lot quicker. And then each city has its own, approach to keeping track of this information, large permitting databases or like me, Excel spreadsheets. So either one's great, but just thinking about how can we best work together and maybe create something in the future that we could use commonly or that could link in. I think that's one of the ideas. If you do have a database that you use, can you link into something that MTC is hosting, for instance, where it knows exactly what data that you want to be able to, what MTC needs. So when you're filling out your information on your side, it can just easily draw into MTC's database. We can, gather from that if that's the go-to source. But just really thinking about, the demands for this data and how useful it is, and just making sure that we, not having to fulfill this, onerous request every year, make it a big time drain for people. So, I'm open to all ideas, just open discussion if folks have ideas or thoughts.
Is there a spreadsheet that aggregates everything for the county?
I'm in process of putting that together. I can, just bring the spreadsheets into one.
Yeah, no problem. Just be interesting to see.
Yeah, there's I think one of the things we'll do is just be able to create that consistent kind of reporting profile that we've done last year, kind of doing the countywide analysis. We're still waiting to get the county and the city of Sonoma, so wanted to get those pieces in before we started pulling it all together, but hopefully those will be in soon. So once those countywide results though are ready, we'll share them. And it probably isn't that hard to just scale those down to the jurisdiction level too, so you can just kind of have a nice profile as well.
Well, between the county and city of Sonoma, I know one of them is gonna be a lot harder to map.
I'm not sure which one. Well, the nice thing about the county though is that, like I was mentioned, there's a lot of that APR data that was already in, so it's really looking at kind of what are the big. Most onerous projects that we might, really need to be aware of that would have the greatest, transportation impacts. Essentially.
Like a certain builder's remedy application south of Sonoma State in near Elliott's Land.
Exactly. So we'll put that on the list to review for sure.
Okay. I have a quick comment too, and thank you, Adam, for all this information. We want all this information so we can make sure it's in the travel model. So projects like that, when we get a call, we can say, yeah, it's in the model, right?
Yeah.
But there are other applications too. The town of Windsor actually included their map as part of one of their council agenda packets last month. Because they were sending a letter to Sonoma County Transit asking for improved service and just showing, this is all the development happening. Consider providing some more service. So yeah, there's a lot of application there. And, I think for our board, the intent would be to have a more general kind of high level overview. So it may be good in October to come to this group with kind of that high level overview
Mhm.
and get some feedback on that before going to the board.
Great idea. Yep.
There's interest in that.
Any final things on that?
Nope.
Okay.
Looks like we're good.
Got any Zoom questions or are we okay?
And Nate, I'll just maybe mention, once I get the final results from the county and city of Sonoma, I'll forward these results on to you, like as I did in the past.
Thanks. That'd be fantastic. Do you mind if I share them with CZI? I kind of want to show them how it's more than just housing. I had mentioned at the last meeting, I was talking to the Chan Zuckerberg Foundation.
Yeah, no, that would be totally fine.
Okay,
Great.
thank you. And I'll share your name because she wanted to follow up with people, so.
Okay, great. That sounds good.
And apologies for my ignorance, but Ada, what is CZI?
It's the Chan Zuckerberg Foundation.
Okay, so
Yeah, which they're just interested in how data is being collected and used, and they're focused on housing, but I was kind of saying you all are looking at like an integrated system, and it would be for really specifically, it was about how difficult it is for jurisdictions to continuously report development data was the conversation. But thanks.
Great. Well, Dana, do you want to take us into the countywide active transportation plan update?
Yeah, so this will be brief, but we kicked off the countywide active transportation plan update with our consultant team in June. And that includes both the countywide plan as well as updates for 7 of the local jurisdiction plans. We've been working hard throughout the summer on data collection. And last month we brought draft vision goals and objectives to review with the countywide bicycle pedestrian advisory committee, where we are really doing the bulk of the facilitation of this plan. Our consultants have developed a draft public engagement plan, which looks at the first phase of public engagement happening in October, November, to really focus on identifying needs and concerns and barriers for active transportation. They are also developing a more detailed strategy for technical analysis, which I'll be reviewing starting next week. And various major milestone updates are planned for both the countywide advisory committees as well as the local advisory committees for the jurisdictions that we're updating plans for. So those are mostly taking place in September and October. And our consultants will be coming to the PAC on October 19th to provide that update. And that first milestone update is really focused on, there will be an overview of the scope and schedule of the project, the role of each committee and how they can provide input on the plan. And then there'll also be a presentation of the existing conditions and approach to technical analysis. And for the city of Cotati, which is kind of on an accelerated schedule, during that timeframe, they'll be jumping into the phase 2 or milestone 2 updates, which is really focused more on a presentation of the technical analysis. And looking at, discussing public engagement for actually identifying project recommendations and programs. So that is it from me. If anybody has any questions, we'll hear a lot more in October.
Okay, not seeing any questions in the room or on Zoom, so we look forward to that in October. We've got a vehicle miles traveled update and roundtable.
Yeah, this was requested by Jeff, so if anyone sees it, maybe pass the information along. But yeah, he just wanted to hear kind of where we're at as far as BMT goes at SCTA and do a quick check in to see if anyone else has anything new to report. So at SCTA, we're still maintaining some resources on our website, including BMT maps. Those are under the forecasting resources, I think, on the planning section of our website. We also have the BMT mitigation and reduction calculator available on the website, including all the documentation, the training videos and everything like that. And the tool itself are up on our website. And then we're waiting to hear back on the Caltrans Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant we submitted to develop recommendations for the BMT mitigation of banking and exchange program. So announcements are supposed to be out during the summer, kind of near the end of the summer, so we hope to hear back soon. If we'll be receiving, if we're successful in getting that grant, and if we do, we'll be putting together an RFP to get someone on board to make some recommendations on how we could set up a program like that here in Sonoma County, what the needs are, how it can be administered, things like that. So hopefully I'll have more to report in October on how that went. If we get the grant, kind of, hopefully have a scope. If not, next steps, where we go from here. So what can we do without the grant? We submit again, things like that. So from SCTA, that's where we're at right now.
Okay, Orlando, I don't suppose you have any surprise announcements for us.
No, I don't actually.
Okay, well, in lieu of Jeff, does anybody have any general VMT comments? Otherwise, sounds like maybe just another discussion for October. Okay, well, I'm sure everyone still loves VMT. We can touch on state or the state of the local tax measures.
Yeah, and Suzanne, our executive director, wanted me to bring this up at the meeting today. So included in the packet is a summary of local tax measures and city measures. Suzanne and Tanya from RCPA have been gathering this information. They've been working on a climate protection potential tax measure and working with our board on that. So they've been gathering this information. The polling wasn't great. So the board decided not to put anything on the ballot in the near term. They're looking at other alternatives, but just wanted to provide this information. It's kind of a good summary of, the tax measures in the county and penny tax measures, and just polled the group to see if there's anything kind of on the horizon that you may be thinking about showing up on a ballot soon. And there are a few in here that we already know about. There's the improved enhanced local fire protection initiative, a childcare and children's health initiative, and a potential city of Sebastopol sales tax. So those are the ones we know about that may be coming up on the ballot, but would be interested to hear if there's anything else that I can pass on to Suzanne and Tanya as they're working on that.
Carrie?
Hey, Chris. Yeah, so the Sebastopol tax measure, they decided not to do that.
Okay, that's good to know.
I think they got kind of the lukewarm polling as well, but also wanted to be a little bit more organized. So that was the decision. And then at our CTAC meeting at the CDC yesterday, we did hear not about this year, but about the BAFTA, the Bay Area Housing Finance Authority. Thank you, Ada, got that right. They are looking at a November 24 ballot measure. And sounds like it's a huge measure. It's like 10 billion or 20 billion. They haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah, there's a potential regional transit measure too, so I think these are all local, but it would be good to get those big regional measures on here too. Thank you.
Chris, are you looking for one for next year or this?
And then the near term is Cloverdale thinking of something?
Yeah, we have a consultant kind of kicking the tires on something, but I wouldn't say what it is yet. I mean, so, but I'll let you know if where we go with it.
That sounds good. Thanks, Kevin.
Okay, I think we're done with that one. So the rest of the time is just going to be standing updates. Since this is just a committee of the whole, we're not going to have public comment because it's not an actionable meeting. Not sure if we have any members of the public, but just as a courtesy, we won't be taking any public comment today. So for standing updates, why don't we start on Zoom for this? So whether looks like Carrie's.
I'll start off, sure. And actually I'll start off with BMT. We actually have funding through our LEAP grant to do VMT threshold. So we started working with Fair and Peers, actually end of July was our kickoff for that with our planning commission. And we're going to city council September 5th to get them sort of oriented on it. It's a super quick project. After those 2 meetings, we'll be developing the draft memo. We already have input from our commission on that. So we're looking at adopting thresholds. We're looking at using the Sebastopol VMT as a baseline for residential and the regional for office commercial. It sounds like that's basically what others who have done work in the county or in the have done. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah, we have the ATP presentation coming up to our planning commission in September as well, which will be great. Thank you, Dana. Our objective design standards, we are starting the review process for that. Our planning commission adopted a resolution recommending it. Our design review board is taking a little bit more time. They've had 1 meeting and they're going to have at least 1 more to review, and then I'll go to council. Our design review subcommittee is also working on SB 9 regulations, and those are both with Opticos as our consultant. The SB 9, the odds we're doing as a resolution for design guidelines. The SB 9 will be both a subdivision and zoning ordinance updates. So that'll be towards the end of this year or early next year by the time that gets adopted, depending on comments. We also submitted a project home key application with St. Vincent de Paul for 845 Gravenstein North. That's where the RV temporary safe parking is right now. But that would be for 22 units of permanent affordable housing. And we have an EIR underway for the City Ventures 80 unit plus ADUs development on the north side of town. So that's a pretty substantial development for us. We had the scoping meeting last month, and it sort of turned into a neighborhood community meeting, answered a lot of questions as those things tend to go. But it seems like that is moving along fairly smoothly. And then our Woodmark SB 35 project phase 1, which is 48 units, is under construction. They've been doing grading. They've had some delays because of supply chain issues, but they are definitely moving forward quickly with that. So, and our Hotel Sebastopol is They're still working towards stuff. They have archaeology stuff. They're trying to get approved by the federal level before they can start construction, but it is approved by the state SHPO at this point. And so we're hoping I don't know if they'll start construction this year or not, but they'll at least start doing something by October, because otherwise their entitlements expire. So that's it for Sebastopol.
Well, I'll go for Cloverdale real quick. We're also starting our VMT. We're hiring First Carbon and Barron Piers. We're going to amend our circulation element and do an EIR with overriding considerations for the VMT future. One interesting thing is we're probably gonna have a ballot initiative next year to extend our UGB, which to incorporate this assisted care facility that's up on the hill that wants to expand, but the county won't let them because they don't have sewer and water. So that's going to be interesting. We're starting to work on our design guidelines for objective standards. We just took that to subcommittee the other day. We have 225 affordable units in process. And I don't know if you guys know, but we have an approved resort on the south end of town on an old Louisiana Pacific site. The SMART train tracks go right through it. It borders the Russian River. Anyway, long story short, it's been for sale for 20 years and we've had lots of tire kickers. They've gotten pretty deep with it, but we think we have one now that has a really cool concept, and we're just hoping that we can reel that in and get this project off the ground. It really helped this town quite a bit. That's all I have.
Ada, do you want to say anything before you run away?
Yeah, I have to jump off, but wanted to say, one, we are kicking off the Plan Bay Area limited in focus plus process. So if people want to attend, one of the things, there's a lot of transportation participation, but we're seeing like economic development directors and there are other strategies that people may want to kind of give input in. Also, just a little bit of a heads up. Patati is like the first one out the gate in terms of getting their scope of work in for this round of PDA grants. Congratulations. One of the things that's coming up for us is that we had put a requirement of approved housing elements by December, and in compliance housing elements by December 2023. This is less of a problem in Sonoma, but region-wide, that's been it may be a very big barrier to many of our grants being funded. So just an interesting, it's a conversation that's happening in-house, but just wanted to let folks know and remind folks that kind of these policies that we're linking to transportation funding are important, and we are looking at them as we do our grants. Both that, and I mean, it affects a lot of other funding in terms of the OBAG regional funding. But the next set of conversations is the TOC policies that people have to be in compliance with by 2026. So there's a meeting in September 7th or 8th, I think, that if people want to talk to your representatives, if there are concerns, it's important that people, that's going to be a big discussion. There have been some refinements in the TOC policy, which will be published closer to the meeting date. So encourage everyone, and I can send out a link when it happens, but it does have impact, and want to make sure people take that into consideration. So people with current grants are expected to use some of the funding to help their PDAs kind of get to whatever standard it needs to be at that time. But again, encouraging people to participate and make sure your comments are heard. Thanks so much. I'm sorry to jump off for a farm worker housing discussion. Talk to you later. Bye.
Do we have any other member updates from Zoom?
Yeah, it's Smart here. I'll just give a very brief update. ridership has remained quite strong, carried over 66,000 riders in July. We're seeing very strong youth ridership, as well as very strong midday ridership, 12:45 trains. So thank you to the lazy teenagers out there. We released some initial data on our Smart Connect shuttle. It's carried over 500 passengers since launch. We're averaging about 9 riders per weekday. The vast majority of the trips have both the smart station and the airport as either an origin or destination. So people are really making that particular first and last mile connection. Most of the trips are on demand. About a quarter of them are booked in advance. And about 60% of the trips are booked on the Ride Pingo app versus the rest as a walk-up or call center. We're really going to be ramping up some of the marketing on our shuttle. So if you decide to do some micro-transit wine tasting, you might get to have one of these cool orange wine koozies. We'll be handing some of those out. And that's about it from Smart.
Great, thank you. So we'll go to the room now, and then just for a time check, we've got about 10 minutes left. Any volunteers to go first?
I can get it out of the way.
Okay.
Roanoke Park has a fairly small planning department right now in Jeff's absence, so there's me, and then I have Susie and Clotilde with me in our little corner, and Mary Grace is on a temporary leave of absence right now, so that leaves us pretty bare bones. Heard that the upcoming recruitment job postings should be going out either tomorrow or Monday. So if you know anybody who's in the area looking for a job, let them know. But we're chugging along. General Plan 2040, the timeline of that has still been extended to make some revisions. The Federated Indians of the Great Rancheria have expanded their tribal trust to include some of the city land or land previously within city boundaries. So there's some general plan updates that need to happen there. Otherwise, we've got a lot of build out specific plan development areas stuff going on there. And downtown, I don't believe there's been any major changes in the last 2 months. So you probably all know the current status of that, but there are some relevant components of that. There's a road diet on one side proposed, some pedestrian crossing, some other transit related items. Of course, there's a smart station there. That's it for me.
Great, thank you.
I can go.
Sure.
Going down the line. So, and I'm sure I'm gonna miss a lot of things. We got so much going on, but general plan or draft general plan update is out on the streets. We're currently in the engagement process. We had our first community workshop on Tuesday. And for a general plan, it was very well attended. But we're going to be doing a tremendous amount of outreach in the next couple months. With I think we have 3 more actual workshops, and then we're going to be doing pop-ups. So we've got stuff almost every day of the week for the next 2 months. So if you're out and about in Santa Rosa, you'll probably see us trucking along with our general plan and begging people for comments. And then that process, we're supposed to be done with the bulk of that work by the end of this year, and with hopeful adoption of the general plan and the EIR in early spring of next year. So that is our goal. In the meantime, we're continuing to work on our missing middle housing process. And our House Santa Rosa project, which is an internal project to create some streamlining and mapping and kind of technical stuff. I can't think of a good word right now, but anyway, it's all technical internal IT type things to document our housing to help with streamlining. And that is slated to be done probably by no later than the end of this year. We are using LEAP funding for that, and we've got some extra, so we're looking for some projects. We're probably going to be updating our objective design standards and some other things to help move along some of our housing element objectives for our recently adopted housing element. We've got our cannabis program that we've got a grant for. We're moving along with that and creating streamlining for that program. An incredible amount of development happening, as we mentioned earlier, with some people loving that, some people not. We just had a wall raising for the Mahonia Glen project a couple of weeks ago, which was very exciting. So SB35 project. We are waiting for the Shenate campus site. They have to get us a couple exhibits, and then we're going to be holding our neighborhood meeting. I remember if you were there for the last one, but yeah, so that'll be standing room only. So that's something that everybody's looking forward to. And that one, they're just moving forward with the zoning and general plan amendments right now, but we're expecting that to be somewhere between 800 and 900 units for that project. And then El Noca, we are waiting for that to be resubmitted. That's a project that keeps on giving. It's been going on for, I don't know, 20 plus years. We've got the new property owner, and they're trying to figure out specifically what they want to do moving forward. So that one, hopefully in the next month or so, we'll have a better idea of what they want to do. But anyway, yeah, just lots of things happening both in current development and long range. And I'm sure there's a million things that I've forgotten, but that's what I can remember.
Cool. Can we go next?
Thank you, Scott. Yeah, thanks, Jessica. Elliot. Yeah, so Santero Way specific plan is kicking off. We have our consultant 4Leaf under contract, and we'll be going to the planning commission on Monday for the formal kickoff. So the goal is to increase the residential development around the smart station. With a specific plan update, incorporating TOC policies, and also trying to get some more regional connectivity with all the bike and ped elements. It's pretty challenged because it's a cul-de-sac neighborhood completely surrounded by Rohnert Park's jurisdiction. So it'll be a kind of interesting process, but really good. And I think the neighborhood is tentatively excited about it. There's a lot of existing residents. And we'll be doing some engagement efforts at the farmers market, trying to catch people before that wraps up in September. Hotel Katati is under construction, so that's very excited. Katati has no hotels, so that's a very big deal. Get that going, and we're really excited to keep working with them. They're probably going to get all the grading and site work done, hopefully pour the foundation, then button up for winter, and then kick off vertical construction in the spring. But we'll see, depending on weather. Our various kind of larger projects that we have probably about 500 units out around the Lowe's area on 116 under various stages of review, but those are starting to track and get moving towards decisions. At least we have a rezoning going that the city initiated. That's going next week as well. And then I expect kind of some public hearings on at least one of the projects, and hopefully some others start to move forward. Our SB35 5-story tower in downtown Katati is pending agreement with the tribe. So we have a draft agreement. So I don't know how many of you all have actually been able to move to a process out of, I think it's AB 168, where you have to have tribal consultation on SB35, and then essentially you work into an agreement that's a three-party agreement with the tribe, the city, and the developer that essentially mimics CEQA mitigation measures, in my experience, as a way to make sure that potential cultural resources aren't impacted. It's kind of an interesting process, and it's taken a while to get there. There's not even that many examples of these agreements in the state, but we've been able to get to a pretty close place with that. So more stay tuned on that one, but it's taken about a year or so. And then, as Jessica mentioned, we're starting to move towards some of our housing element commitments, trying to just organize those and wrap our head around how we're going to be able to tackle that. It's a lot of ordinance work, ADU ordinance, potential amnesty program for unpermitted construction, density bonus ordinance, objective design standards for single family and flex housing. It's kind of all on our top priority list for this year. We'll see how many we get to them. But I have a kind of statement question. So in 2020, when we wrapped up our first ADU ordinance, we sent it to HCD for review, as was directed by HCD. We just heard back from them on our 2020 submittal. And so we were scratching our head like, why did we get this letter? And then we realized that maybe it was when we sent them the ADU ordinance, and they've confirmed that that is their response time. Over 3 years. And their comment, as you can imagine, identified significant areas where our 2020 ADU ordinance is out of compliance with state law. Which, yeah. And so, but one relatively shocking element of their comments was that HCD's interpretation of ADU law is that all parcels can have a standard ADU, standard JADU, and a second ADU of up to 800 square feet, which benefits from those 4-foot rear and side yard setbacks. I met with them to confirm and discuss all of their direction in their letter, and I said, so this is like, you know, fairly substantial policy departure from anyone that I've spoken to that's actually read the state legislator, you know, the legislation. They've confirmed that is their interpretation. So now 2 ADUs plus a JADU on all single family parcels in the state. How they rolled this out was an update to their workbook, their ADU workbook that's on their website. And I don't believe they've announced it any other way. It's been confirmed by Josh Abrams in the Napa Sonoma collaborative that he is aware of that, and he has also received similar direction from HCD that is their policy. No one.
Hey,
else-
Noah,
Yeah.
is that possibly if someone wanted to do through SB 9?
No.
Wow, that's
Uh-huh.
weird.
And so I pointed out that, you know, most of us aren't going to read a policy book that comes out 2 years after the legislation is adopted, as we're trying to draft our ADU ordinances in response to the legislation. So they may want to do a press release or something, or some way to get that information out, but I'm just trying to let all of you know that apparently that's state policy, which is now basically 3 ADUs per single family lot if you're counting JADUs.
We just updated ours, so I'm checking in with my ADU planner here to.
Yeah.
find out.
So look at the ADU workbook. The language is less than clear, but that apparently is their interpretation, and they have a portal. HCD does have a portal, and they've committed to meeting with people, and you can submit any inquiries you want through that portal, and I would encourage you all to ask them for clarity. But that's the direction they gave me in a meeting with 4 HCD staff and myself.
Like clarity of where does it say that in the legislation?
So my reading of the legislation, it's the most recent one where it talks about the 4-foot side and rear yard setbacks, and then the ability. There's 2 separate sections of the state law, because I think this is when they combined 2 separate ADU ordinances into one and adopted that legislation. Everybody that I was familiar with was reading that as 2 separate kind of directions for policy. HCD interpreted that as additive, meaning you get 2 separate ADUs. No one else that I had spoken with read it that way, but apparently it is state law until it goes to court.
So we are a couple minutes over, so I just want to be respectful for everybody's time, and I don't know how I'm going to follow that one up. But over at the county, the Board of Supervisors approved an update to the local coastal plan in July. So the next steps for that is it goes on to the California Coastal Commission for certification. And then in similar things that the state needs to approve, our housing element is going to the board this coming Tuesday. So we'll be looking forward to the end of the builder's remedy window. We've got about 700 units submitted so far under builder's remedy applications that are locked in through SB 330. So provided that they submit within 6 months. So between that and potentially second ADUs, maybe the RENA number isn't quite so bad. So I'll just leave it there. There's a million other things, but we'll save it for October. So thank you, everybody, for today. Sorry for going a couple minutes over. And hopefully we'll have a strong showing in October in person, and we can make some actions. So thanks, everybody. And
You got the gavel, you got.